Why was she invisible when she had done everything right? The October air was sharp, cold enough to sting her lungs with every quiet breath, yet Sarah Chin stood motionless, a white uniform pressed so crisp it seemed cut from glass. Rows of midshipmen stretched in perfect symmetry across the Naval Academy parade ground, boots aligned like chess pieces, faces locked forward, eyes unblinking. She was 1 in 100, no better, no worse, and yet somehow unseen. Her shoes reflected the Annapolis sky in a flawless mirror shine. She had polished them long into the night, fingers cramping because details mattered. Her uniform collar hugged her neck like a quiet test of endurance. Every button gleamed, every crease knifed sharp. Weeks of preparation funneled into this moment. And still, as she waited in silence for Admiral Henry Blackstone to begin his dreaded inspection, Sarah could feel it, the certainty that her presence didn't quite register. She had always carried that gift or curse, to blend in, to vanish into crowds, not a defect, not exactly, more like a shadow among stronger lights. Her roommate Jennifer once teased her about it. Sarah, you could stand in the front row of a wedding photo and still no one would remember you were there. Sarah never minded the joke, until now. Because this morning was supposed to matter. The Admiral's footsteps cracked against the concrete, slow, deliberate, the rhythm of judgment approaching. Every sound on the parade ground seemed to vanish beneath it, the gulls, the distant water lapping the seawall, even the nervous breath of midshipmen holding too still for too long. Blackstone carried his reputation like an unseen weight that pressed on every chest. Brutal, exacting, legendary for punishments that stung not just the body but the soul. Sarah's roommate Jennifer shifted stiffly beside her, adjusting her collar once more, breaking the frozen uniformity of the line for a fraction of a second. "He's brutal," Jennifer whispered, lips barely moving. "Dad said he once made a whole company do push-ups for an hour because of a loose thread." Sarah didn't answer. She had studied everything, naval budgets, South China Sea conflicts, engineering principles. She prayed she wouldn't be quizzed on. She wasn't worried about the questions. She was worried about being seen at all. Because lately, she felt invisible. Marcus, the tall Texan on her right, radiated presence without trying. Jennifer carried the pedigree of a Navy family name that whispered authority. Even strangers noticed them. And then there was Sarah, lean, disciplined, but unremarkable. Her only unusual trait was the faded ring she wore, a family heirloom dulled to brass over years of wear. Few ever asked about it, and those who did never looked twice at her answer. "It was my father's." The ring had weight, though, not just in gold but in memory. She could still feel his hand closing hers around it the night before his final deployment. He had smiled, kissed her forehead, and said words she was too young to understand. "Keep it safe. It will mean more one day." Then he was gone. A training accident, they told her mother, nothing more. Admiral Blackstone drew closer, his shadow creeping down the line of midshipmen, inspecting each uniform, each nervous salute. He questioned one cadet about ship classifications, another about Pacific Fleet operations. Each voice trembled, then steadied under his weight. Approval was rare, disapproval even rarer, but both could mark a career before it had even begun. Sarah's chest tightened as the line narrowed. 3 away. 2. Jennifer straightened and delivered her answers with the flawless confidence drilled into her since childhood. Blackstone gave her a curt nod, a gift more precious than medals. Marcus followed, his booming Texas voice steady as he explained naval engineering principles, theory sharpened by Sarah's tutoring. She felt pride flicker inside her when she heard his confident response. Maybe she wasn't invisible, she thought. She had helped him sound like that. Maybe her presence mattered in ways no one saw. And then her turn. But the moment Blackstone's gaze shifted toward her, a shout echoed at the far end of the line. A midshipman collapsed in the heat, crumpling like a marionette with its strings cut. Medics rushed forward. Blackstone pivoted instantly, commanding order, his inspection breaking stride. The formation adjusted, the interruption consuming precious minutes. By the time silence returned and the fallen cadet was carried off, the Admiral resumed exactly where he had left off, except Sarah's place had shifted in the confusion. Blackstone stepped right past her polished shoes, past her rigid shoulders, past the days, weeks, years of preparation for this very inspection. He moved from Marcus to the cadet beside her as though she wasn't there at all. Skipped. The air tightened around her throat. Should she speak? Break formation. Protocol demanded silence unless addressed. Every instinct screamed to raise her hand to force acknowledgement, but she stood frozen. Don't move. Don't breathe. He'll notice. He has to notice. He didn't. The inspection carried on, one cadet after another. Her heart pounded, trapped between duty and the suffocating knowledge that she was erased in plain sight. Jennifer glanced sideways, sympathy flickering across her rigid face. Marcus didn't even notice. No one did. 15 minutes later, the inspection neared its end. The Admiral was already preparing his remarks. She had been invisible the entire time. Weeks of studying, rehearsing answers late at night, perfecting her uniform until her fingertips bled for nothing. Her jaw clenched, but tears refused to form. Discipline was stronger, yet inside the crack was deepening. She wasn't overlooked because of a mistake. She was overlooked because she didn't matter. Her father's ring pressed against her skin, heavier than before. What had he meant when he said it would matter? What had he seen in her that no one else ever had? Across the field, a ripple of motion broke the air again. Another officer approached. Not just any officer. The entire parade ground seemed to inhale at once. 4 stars gleamed in the sunlight. Admiral James Patterson, Chief of Naval Operations, was walking directly toward them. And with his arrival, Sarah's mourning, her invisibility, her quiet shame, was about to be shattered in ways she couldn't yet imagine. How often does a moment arrive that changes the weight of every second before it? The parade ground froze, the sharp autumn air holding its breath. 4 stars gleamed on Admiral James Patterson's shoulders, but it wasn't the rank alone that silenced everyone. It was the way he carried it, like a storm contained in human form, calm on the surface, lethal in potential. Even Admiral Blackstone, whose very name struck fear into cadets, shifted subtly as he approached. Respect bent him, not protocol. Sarah didn't dare move, didn't dare even blink. She had already been skipped once, erased once, and she felt the sting of it raw in her chest. Now another inspection, another set of eyes to look through her like glass. She braced for the humiliation. But Patterson didn't look through anyone. His eyes scanned the line like searchlights, precise, deliberate, and strangely personal. He wasn't measuring shoes or collars. He was measuring something else, something invisible. Jennifer stiffened as he paused before her. "Pennsylvania?" he asked casually, like a man who already knew the answer. "Yes, sir. Philadelphia, sir," Jennifer snapped, her voice as crisp as her uniform. "Fine city," Patterson said. "My wife's family is from there." Then he moved on, leaving Jennifer stunned, cheeks flushed from the honor of such an exchange. Marcus straightened as Patterson approached. "Texas," the Admiral said without looking at a roster. Marcus nodded hard, his chest swelling. Patterson smiled faintly. "Good state for strength." He moved on. Sarah's pulse hammered in her neck. "Don't stop. Don't stop. Keep walking. Skip me again." The thought was almost a prayer, because if he stopped, if he actually looked, what would he see? An average girl with nothing remarkable, a mistake standing in borrowed honor. But he did stop. Directly in front of her. "Midshipman," he said, and his tone was different now. Not casual, not warm, but commanding. "Waited. Show me your hands." Her stomach lurched. Show her hands. That wasn't protocol, not in any inspection. For a split second she wondered if she had misheard. Maybe he'd said stance. Maybe. "Your hands, midshipman," Patterson repeated, patient but immovable. Sarah extended them. Palms down, fingers steady, every nerve on fire. The Admiral bent slightly, eyes narrowing, not at her fingernails, not at her knuckles, at the ring. Her father's ring. The same dull gold she had worn since childhood, overlooked by everyone who saw it. But not by him. Patterson's posture changed in an instant. What had been casual curiosity stiffened into something reverent. His eyes locked on the faded engraving as though he had seen a ghost. He looked from the ring to her face, back to the ring, and his expression shifted. Shock, recognition, respect. "Where did you get this ring?" he asked softly. Sarah swallowed. "It was my father's, sir." "Your father's name?" "Lieutenant Commander David Chin, sir. He died when I was 12. The silence after her words felt alive. Patterson stepped closer, lowering his voice to a near whisper. "David Chin, Chinese-American, Special Operations, Southeast Asia." Sarah's breath caught. "Yes, sir." Something shifted in Patterson's eyes. Not surprise, memory. He knew her father. The parade ground blurred around her. For a moment, it wasn't boots and uniforms and eyes drilling into her. It was her father's laugh, faint and fatting. It was his hand pressing that ring into hers, promising it would mean something one day. And now today Patterson saw it. Admiral Blackstone finally stirred, confusion sharpening his features. "Sir?" he asked quietly, clearly unsettled by Patterson's sudden focus. But Patterson didn't look at him. He kept his eyes on Sarah. "Midshipman Chin," he said louder now for the whole company to hear, "I need to speak with you privately." He turned to Blackstone. "Immediately." "Yes, sir. Shall I dismiss the formation?" "No," Patterson barked. His voice cracked the air like thunder. "No one leaves until she approves." The words struck like a bomb. 100 midshipmen stood frozen, eyes widening. Even Blackstone faltered, his jaw tightening in disbelief. A 4-star admiral, the chief of naval operations himself, had just handed authority of dismissal to her. A 19-year-old cadet who had been overlooked not 30 minutes earlier. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the pounding of Sarah's own heartbeat. She felt it in her fingertips, in her throat, in the soles of her polished shoes. "Why her? Why now?" Admiral Patterson straightened, his voice firm. "Admiral Blackstone, are you familiar with Operation Legacy 9? Blackstone's eyes flickered, his control momentarily cracking. "Sir, that operation is classified above my clearance level." "It was," Patterson corrected, the past tense cutting sharp. "As of this morning, certain aspects have been declassified." Sarah felt the world tilt. Operation Legacy 9. She had never heard those words in her life, yet they vibrated with gravity, as if carrying echoes of her father's voice. Patterson's expression softened, but only slightly. He looked at her with a strange mix of grief and respect. "Midshipman Chen," he said, "your father led Operation Legacy 9 in 1998. He prevented a war in the South China Sea." Her breath hitched. No, it wasn't possible. Her father had been ordinary. A quiet officer who read bedtime stories, who helped her with homework, who never spoke of battles or wars. His record had listed deployments, administrative duties, a training accident, nothing heroic, nothing historic. And yet Patterson was saying otherwise. The words pressed down like weights she wasn't ready to hold. He had prevented a war. He had led a team. He had died for something far bigger than she had ever been told. Her throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to ask, but nothing came out. Admiral Patterson reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folder, thick with stamps and seals. He held it carefully, like something sacred. "This," he said, "is a declassified summary of Operation Legacy 9, authorized for release to family members as of yesterday. Your father wasn't just an officer, midshipman. He was one of the most decorated operatives in naval special operations history." Sarah's knees almost buckled. The words hit her harder than any reprimand, any dismissal. Pride, disbelief, grief, confusion. Every emotion surged, tangled, clashing inside her like storm waves. Her father wasn't ordinary. He was extraordinary. He was legendary. And she had never known. The formation remained frozen, every midshipman standing like stone statues, but Sarah could feel their eyes on her. Jennifer's gaze, wide with disbelief. Marcus's struggling to mask shock. Dozens of others, all burning questions they couldn't ask. But Patterson wasn't finished. His eyes softened, almost breaking through the steel mask he wore. He reached up slowly and then he saluted her. The Chief of Naval Operations, saluting a 19-year-old cadet. Protocol shattered, history bent, silence roared louder than thunder. Sarah's chest burned, her body trembling, but muscle memory saved her. She returned the salute, sharp and precise, even as her heart broke and rebuilt in the same breath. Her father's ring glinted in the sunlight, and for the first time she believed it meant something. But the question still hung, unbearable and unanswered. Why was she learning all of this now? How much truth can one heart hold before it breaks? Sarah's arm lowered slowly, her salute complete, but her pulse still raced. The shock of what had just happened, the most powerful man in the Navy saluting her, had barely settled before his voice cut the silence again. "Midshipman Chen," Admiral Patterson said firmly, "walk with me." He didn't wait for her reply. He turned, commanding without commanding, his stride deliberate toward the administrative building. Sarah stood frozen, boots anchored in disbelief. She hadn't even processed the last 30 seconds, and already the world demanded more. She glanced left. Jennifer's eyes were glassy, a mixture of pride and disbelief. Marcus's jaw tightened as if he wanted to say something but couldn't break protocol. Behind them, 100 midshipmen stood at rigid attention, still waiting for dismissal. Patterson's words, "No one leaves until she approves," hung heavy in the air. Her body moved before her mind caught up. One step, then another. Each footfall against the parade ground echoed louder than cannons in her head. The silence of the formation pressed against her back. She felt their eyes, their questions, their awe. She felt the weight of her father's ring burning into her skin. Admiral Blackstone fell into step beside Patterson, his expression still carved from stone, though his eyes betrayed unease. He wasn't used to being overshadowed, especially not like this. "Sir," Blackstone said cautiously, his voice pitched low but carrying urgency, "with respect, I need clarification. This midshipman—" "Admiral," Patterson interrupted, his tone cool but sharp, "the classification level of Operation Legacy 9 was beyond your clearance, beyond almost everyone's. Families were told nothing. Even the Secretary of Defense at the time knew only fragments." "And her mother," Sarah found her voice suddenly, though it came out thin, uncertain. "What was she told?" Patterson stopped walking. For the first time since his arrival, he hesitated. His eyes softened. "She was told your father died in a training accident, because that's all she was authorized to know. That's all anyone was authorized to know." The words cut deep, sharper than steel. Sarah had grown up with that story. She had mourned by it. She had shaped her life around it. And now, to be told it was a lie not out of malice but out of secrecy, felt like betrayal layered on grief. Her voice trembled, but she forced the words out. "So my whole life was a half-truth." "Not a half-truth," Patterson said gently. "A protection. Your father died in service of something that, at the time, could not be revealed. The world would have been less stable if his mission had been exposed. But," he lifted the folder slightly, "now the truth is yours." The wind carried the smell of sea salt across the parade ground. The sky above was wide, indifferent. Sarah wanted to scream into it, to demand why. Why today? Why now? Why her father's legacy had been buried in shadows only to be dragged into light in front of her peers. But she didn't scream. She clenched her jaw, held her silence, just as her father had. Inside the administrative building, the air shifted, quieter, dimmer. walls lined with flags and portraits of graduates who had risen to greatness. Patterson's voice softened, though it never lost authority. "There's more," he said, guiding her into a conference room. Blackstone lingered at the door, uncertain whether to enter. Patterson didn't invite him. Instead, he closed the door behind them, sealing the space. Sarah sat, though her body remained taut as if the chair couldn't hold her weight. Patterson placed the folder on the table, but didn't open it yet. "Your father," Patterson began, "wasn't just on Legacy 9. He led it, 6 men and women. A mission so critical it was buried under decades of classification. They stopped an escalation that could have become a war between China and Taiwan. They intercepted intelligence, disrupted weapons trafficking networks, prevented a chain reaction of conflict. The ripple effects saved thousands, maybe tens of thousands of lives." Sarah's throat closed. She tried to picture her father, not the bedtime story father, not the quiet smile at the dinner table, but the man Patterson was describing. Tactical, fierce, leading in silence, sacrificing in shadows. She tried and failed. The two images collided inside her, leaving only fragments. "Why are you telling me this now?" she whispered. Patterson's eyes, usually steel, softened with memory. "Because your father made me promise. I was Lieutenant Commander Patterson then, his communications officer. Before that final mission, he told me, if I don't come back, make sure my daughter knows who I really was when she's old enough to understand." The words struck like lightning. A promise carried for 25 years. A secret held by the man who now sat across from her, his eyes heavy with both duty and grief. Sarah stared at him. "And you kept that promise?" Patterson nodded once. "Today, because you're no longer a child, you're about to become an officer yourself. You needed to know the truth before you carry that commission." The folder sat unopened between them. It might as well have been a bomb. Inside lay documents that would rewrite her history, her identity, her very reason for standing in uniform. Her hands trembled. She didn't touch it, not yet. Instead, she whispered, "Was he alone? Were there others?" Patterson's face tightened. 6 on the team. Only 2 survived, myself and 1 other." The room stilled. "Who?" Sarah asked. The door opened before Patterson could answer. A woman entered, civilian clothes failing to disguise the soldier's precision in her step. Broad shoulders, scarred hands, hair streaked with gray pulled back with effortless discipline. Her presence carried weight, experience, hardship, the kind of authority no rank alone could forge. "Master Chief Rebecca Martinez," Patterson said, "the only other survivor of Legacy 9. Sarah's breath caught. Martinez studied her with sharp, unwavering eyes, and then her voice, a low, steady current, filled the room. "You look like him," she said simply. "Your father, he saved my life twice. He was the best leader I ever served under." Sarah's chest cracked. Hearing it from Patterson had been shocking, but hearing it from someone who had bled beside him, it was unbearable. Pride and grief warred inside her. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions, to know every detail, every story, every memory of the man she thought she knew. Instead, her voice broke on just 3 words. Was he afraid? Martinez's expression softened. "Of dying? No, of failing you every day." The silence that followed was thick with ghosts. Sarah's fingers brushed the folder at last. The weight of it grounded her. She didn't open it, not yet. She just held it, trembling. Patterson leaned forward, his tone lower now, almost intimate. "Your father's legacy isn't just about what he did. It's about what he believed. That service means doing what's right when no one is watching. That sometimes the greatest victories are the ones no one will ever hear about. And that honor doesn't always wear medals." Sarah blinked hard, fighting back the sting in her eyes. She wasn't ready to cry. Not here, not in front of them. Instead, she straightened in her chair. "So what happens now?" Patterson exchanged a glance with Martinez. Then he said, "Now you decide what to do with the truth. That ring on your finger, it isn't just gold, it's a promise, a legacy, and it's yours to carry or to set down." Sarah's gaze dropped to the ring. For the first time, she saw it not as dull and faded, but as bright with weight she hadn't asked for. Her father's voice seemed to echo in her memory, faint but steady. "It will mean more one day." That day had come. But what she would do with it, that was a question still waiting. What do you do when the truth you've begged for finally arrives, only to break you open? Sarah sat at the long oak table, the folder in front of her like a sealed fate. Her fingers brushed the edge of it again and again, but she still hadn't opened it. Part of her wanted to tear into it, to consume every page, every word that proved her father was more than the quiet man she remembered. But another part, a deeper, more frightened part, hesitated, because once she looked inside, she could never unknow what she would find. Admiral Patterson and Master Chief Martinez watched her in silence, both patient, both knowing the weight of what sat between them. The air in the room felt heavy, as though even the walls understood they were holding history. Finally, Sarah pulled the string tie loose. The folder cracked open. Inside, commendations, field reports, fragments of declassified transcripts. Some names were blacked out. Whole paragraphs were struck through with thick ink. But her father's name, David Chin, shone again and again. Navy Cross, Distinguished Service Medal, citations for acts of valor she had never imagined. She skimmed lines, her breath quickening. LT, CMDR. Chin demonstrated extraordinary leadership under direct fire, prevented catastrophic escalation, sacrificed personal safety to ensure mission success. The words blurred. Her eyes filled, but she forced them clear. Patterson spoke gently. "It's not the full record. Some things will never be unsealed. But it's enough. Enough to know the man you thought you lost was more than anyone was allowed to admit." Martinez leaned forward, her scarred hands resting flat on the table. He never wanted glory, not medals, not recognition. What he wanted was you, to live, to grow, to carry yourself with the same quiet strength he carried every day. Sarah swallowed hard. "And you both kept this from me all these years." Martinez's eyes softened. "Because we had to. Orders. Silence was survival, but don't mistake silence for forgetting. I remembered him every single day." Her voice caught, roughened by years and memories. "There were nights I woke from dreams hearing his voice, telling us to move, to fight, to live. He saved me more than twice. He saved me every time his memory kept me going." The room fell silent again. Sarah closed the folder, unable to take more. The truth was there, undeniable, and it was too much. Her chest burned with a storm of emotions: pride, grief, betrayal, awe. She wanted to leave, to breathe air that wasn't so heavy with ghosts, but Patterson wasn't finished. He reached into his briefcase and withdrew something smaller this time, a wooden box, polished but worn. He set it in front of her with reverence. "Your father left these behind. Letters. He wrote them in the days before Legacy 9. He never had the chance to send them." Sarah's hand shook as she opened the lid. Inside, carefully folded, were envelopes, each one marked with her name in handwriting she hadn't seen in years but recognized instantly. That looping script, that steady hand. The first letter trembled in her grip. She unfolded it slowly. The paper was yellowed, the ink slightly faded, but the words cut as sharp as ever. "My dear Sarah, if you're reading this, then I didn't come home. I can't tell you why. Maybe you're too young now to understand. Maybe one day you'll know. But what I want you to carry isn't the reason I left. It's the reason I lived. And that reason is you." Her throat tightened, the words blurring. "Whatever path you take, whatever choices you make, don't measure your life in medals or recognition. Measure it in the quiet difference you make, the ones no one may ever see. That's where dignity lives. That's where love endures." The letter slipped in her hands as tears finally broke through. She pressed the paper to her chest, holding it as if she could hold him through it. Neither Patterson nor Martinez interrupted. They let her grieve, let her father's voice fill the silence. When she finally lifted her head, her face streaked with tears, her voice was raw. He knew he wasn't coming back. Martinez nodded slowly. He suspected. Every operator does before missions like that, but he went anyway, because he believed the cost was worth it. Sarah shook her head, the ache in her chest sharp. He left me. He left my mom. Patterson's voice was low. He didn't leave you, Sarah. He gave everything so you could stand here, free, unbroken, carrying more than you realize. The words stung. She wanted to fight them, to push them away, but deep inside, some part of her knew they were true. Silence stretched. Finally, Patterson stood. Midshipman, you're nearing graduation. You'll have choices ahead, ship assignments, career paths, but because of who your father was, there's another path open to you. Special operations. You don't have to decide now, but the door is open. Sarah's eyes widened. Her father's shadow loomed larger than ever. Special operations. The very life that had taken him. The very secret that had stolen her childhood. Was she supposed to follow him? To honor him by repeating his sacrifice? Or was honoring him choosing differently, choosing life instead of shadows? She had no answer, not yet. Patterson gathered his things, his authority resettling on him like armor. You have until graduation, but whatever path you choose, your father's legacy is already alive in you. That ring isn't just a reminder, it's a calling. Whether you answer it is yours alone. He and Martinez left her alone in the room, the wooden box still open, the letters still inside. Sarah sat for what felt like hours, reading, crying, thinking. The campus outside bustled as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Cadets hurried to classes. Flags waved in the Chesapeake wind. The world carried on. But for Sarah, everything had changed. That night in the quiet of her dorm room, she opened another letter. Sarah, you'll grow older. You'll face choices I can't imagine. Some days you'll feel invisible. Others you'll feel broken. But remember this, invisibility isn't weakness, it's strength. The strongest walls are the ones no one sees. The deepest courage is the kind no one claps for. Don't fear being unseen. Sometimes the unseen save the world. Her hands trembled. She pressed the letter to her lips, closing her eyes. Invisibility. That word had haunted her since the morning inspection, since the Admiral skipped over her. But her father had known. He had written to her about it long before she even stood on that parade ground. And suddenly she understood. Being unseen wasn't a curse. It was a calling. Still, the conflict gnawed at her. Was she ready to carry that legacy, or would it crush her? She looked at the ring again, the gold dulled, the engraving almost invisible. She remembered her father's hand closing it into hers. It will mean more one day. That day had come, and the meaning was heavier than she could bear alone. Outside, the lights of Annapolis shimmered against the dark water. The city slept under the protection of sacrifices no one would ever know. Sarah leaned back, the letter clutched to her chest, and whispered into the silence, "Dad, what do I do?" The room gave no answer. Only the ring pressed its weight into her skin, as though it already knew. How do you step forward when every step feels like it belongs to someone else's shadow? The morning after, Sarah walked across the academy grounds with the ring heavy on her hand, her father's letters folded carefully in her pocket. The campus looked the same. The neat lines of white uniformed midshipmen hurrying to classes, the flags flapping sharply in the autumn wind, the sharp tang of salt water in the Chesapeake breeze. But to Sarah, it wasn't the same. Nothing could ever be the same. Every conversation she overheard, every bootstep echoing against stone, felt distant, muffled under the storm of her thoughts. The inspection had ended, but the questions hadn't. Her father's ghost walked beside her now. She could almost hear him in every pause, every silence. Jennifer caught up with her on the steps of Bancroft Hall. "You didn't come back to the room last night. Where were you?" Sarah hesitated. She had no words that wouldn't sound insane. The chief of naval operations handed me my father's classified past, gave me letters written from the grave, and offered me a path into shadows I never asked for. So instead she said quietly, reading. Jennifer studied her face, frowning. You don't look like you slept. I didn't. Sarah, Jennifer's voice softened. What happened yesterday? Do you even understand what it meant? Admiral Patterson saluted you, in front of all of us. That doesn't happen, ever. People are still whispering about it. Whispering? Of course they were. She could feel it in the glances that slid her way during classes, in the subtle shifts of posture when she walked past. Once invisible, she was suddenly seen too much. Jennifer touched her arm gently. I don't know what all of that was, but whatever it is, you're not alone. Remember that. Sarah gave her a small nod, but inside she knew Jennifer couldn't understand. Not yet. Not unless she knew the truth, and the truth was a burden Sarah wasn't ready to share. Later that day, during drills, Sarah felt the shift again. Normally she blended in. Today every move felt scrutinized. Every command from the officers carried a sharper edge when it landed on her. Midshipman Chin, Chin, Chen. Her name echoed louder now, as if her father's shadow stretched behind it. She stumbled once during rifle drill, the butt of her weapon striking a half-beat late against the concrete. It was barely noticeable, barely, but the sound ricocheted in her skull. She imagined her father watching, Martinez watching, Patterson watching. Invisible no longer, and somehow that was worse. That night, alone in the dorm, she opened another letter from the wooden box. Sarah, I don't know if I'll live to see you become who you're meant to be, but if I don't, I want you to know this. You are not my shadow. You are your own light. Don't waste time wondering if you're enough. Be enough in your own way. And never let the silence of others convince you that you don't matter. The world needs quiet strength more than loud pride. The words broke her. She pressed her forehead to the page, her tears staining the ink. You are not my shadow. But wasn't she? The ring, the folder, Patterson's offer, they all pointed to the same thing. She was her father's daughter, expected to step into the void he had left. The next week, training intensified. Physical endurance drills, tactical exercises, academic pressure layered on top. Sarah threw herself into it with a desperation she had never felt before. She pushed harder, ran faster, studied longer. She couldn't be average anymore. She couldn't be invisible. But with every push, the question gnawed deeper. Was she doing this for herself or for him? During a night navigation exercise, she found herself separated from her squad for a brief moment. The woods around the academy were quiet, shadows deep, the cold biting at her face. She crouched, map trembling in her hands, the compass needle quivering. And she heard it again, his voice. Not real, but remembered. Don't fear being unseen. Sometimes the unseen save the world. Her chest tightened. She whispered into the dark, I don't know if I can, Dad. I don't know if I'm strong enough. A twig snapped behind her. Marcus appeared, breathing hard. Lost. Sarah forced her voice steady, just rechecking bearings. He crouched beside her, studying the map. Funny, isn't it? How we spend years training for combat, and the hardest fight is usually with ourselves. The words hit closer than he knew. They found the squad again, but Sarah carried that moment with her. The woods, the silence, the question that wouldn't leave her. Am I strong enough? Another week passed. Patterson didn't return, but his presence lingered like a shadow. Martinez crossed her path once in the mess hall, her sharp eyes softening just slightly as she passed. No words exchanged, but the weight of them pressed on Sarah. At night, Sarah read more letters, some short, some longer, each one a thread pulling her deeper into her father's hidden life. Sarah, leadership isn't loud. It's steady. Don't confuse recognition with worth. The best leaders are often remembered only by the lives they protected. Sarah, if the world forgets my name, let it. But don't ever forget your own. Each line stitched into her heart, but also tore it wider. She began dreaming of him, not the quiet father she remembered, but fragments of the man Patterson described. Boots in mud, gunfire, the weight of command in his eyes. She woke gasping, gripping the ring as though it could anchor her. One evening, Jennifer found her sitting alone in the courtyard, staring at the ring. "You're different," Jennifer said quietly, sitting beside her. Sarah tried to smile. "Maybe that's good. Or maybe it's dangerous. I don't know what's going on with you, Sarah, but don't lose yourself in it. Whatever this is, it's not bigger than you." Sarah shook her head. "It feels like it is." Jennifer looked at her long and hard, then said something Sarah didn't expect. "Then make it yours. Don't let it swallow you. Own it." The words lingered. That night, Sarah wrote in her journal for the first time in months. She didn't usually, but the storm inside her needed somewhere to go. "I was invisible, then I was exposed. Now I'm something in between. I don't know if I'm my father's daughter or if I'm just pretending to be. But if he gave everything for a cause no one could see, maybe I can give something too. Maybe I can carry silence and still matter." When she set the pen down, her hand ached. The ring gleamed faintly under the desk light, its engraving barely visible. The next morning during inspection, Lieutenant Rodriguez barked corrections as usual. But when he stopped in front of Sarah, he didn't correct. He studied her. A flicker of something unreadable passed in his eyes, acknowledgement, maybe respect. Then he moved on. It was the smallest thing, but Sarah felt it like a spark. Maybe she wasn't invisible anymore. Yet the conflict remained. Patterson's offer of special operations loomed. The letters whispered guidance. The academy pressed discipline. And inside, her heart ached with the simple, unbearable truth. She wanted her father's pride, but she also wanted to be herself. And she didn't know if both were possible. What reveals you more, victory or failure? The cold night pressed against Sarah's skin as she crouched low in the brush, rifle in hand, breath fogging the air. This wasn't real combat, just a field exercise, a simulation. But the pounding of her heart didn't know the difference. Darkness wrapped the training grounds like a cloak, the only light the faint glow of chem sticks marking boundaries. Somewhere beyond the trees, another squad moved like predators hunting them. "Chin," whispered Cadet Officer Daniels, her squad leader for the exercise. "Take point, scout ahead." The order hit like a test. Sarah's pulse spiked. She wasn't usually point, others had louder confidence, stronger presence. But tonight the spotlight was hers. She nodded sharply, sliding forward through brush damp with dew. Each step crunched too loud in her ears. Each shadow looked like it could explode into enemy silhouettes. She checked her compass, her map, her bearings. Her father's voice echoed faintly in her mind, pulled from one of the letters. "Don't confuse recognition with worth. The best leaders are remembered only by those they protected." But what if she couldn't protect anyone? A twig snapped to her left. Sarah froze, breath locked in her chest. She raised her hand in a silent signal. Her squad flattened instantly behind her, rifles up. For a long, aching moment, nothing moved. Then footsteps, soft, steady, circling. Her mind screamed two truths at once. Don't move. Act now. She felt the weight of the ring against her finger. Her father wouldn't have hesitated. He would have chosen. Sarah made the call. She waved her squad forward, moving right to flank. The decision was instinct, not certainty. They swept wide, low, weapons raised. And then an ambush. Paint rounds exploded against trees, muffled shouts. The enemy squad lit them up from higher ground. Chaos. Two of her squad went down instantly, sensors flashing red. Jennifer, to her left, stumbled and dropped. Daniels cursed, yelling commands, but the line broke. Sarah dove behind a log, paint splattering inches from her head. She forced her breath steady, eyes scanning. They were pinned, outflanked. She had led them right into it. "You're not him, you're not enough." The thought clawed through her skull. But then through the chaos she noticed something. The enemy squad had overextended. Their left flank hung loose, exposed. It was a gap, risky but real. Sarah's hand shook as she signaled, "Crawl left." Two cadets followed her, others hesitated. Daniels shouted conflicting orders. Confusion ripped through the squad. Sarah bit down hard, fury rising. If no one trusted her, if they thought she was just the quiet shadow, then fine. She'd move alone. She crawled, heart hammering, every second an eternity. Paint splattered close. Shouts echoed, but the gap was real. She slid into it, rising just enough to fire two bursts. Sensors on two enemy cadets lit red. The line broke, shock rippling through them. Her squad surged behind her. Energy flipped in an instant. Now they pressed forward, the tide shifting. Paint rounds cracked through the trees. Shouts turned to cheers. Within minutes, the enemy was routed, their sensors blinking defeat. The exercise buzzer echoed through the night. Simulation over. Sarah collapsed against the log, chest heaving, sweat soaking her collar despite the cold. Around her, cadets whooped and slapped backs. Daniels offered her a stunned look. That flank call saved us. We were cooked otherwise. Jennifer limped over, paint streaking her arm. She gave Sarah a fierce smile. "Never seen you move like that. Damn, Chin, you looked like you belonged." Sarah forced a nod, but inside she wasn't celebrating. Because all she could think was this: I nearly destroyed them first. Her mistake had led them into the ambush. Her correction had saved them, yes, but only after she had put them in danger. Victory didn't feel like victory. It felt like borrowed time. Back in the barracks, long after the debrief, Sarah sat on her bunk, the ring heavy on her hand. She replayed the moment over and over, the silence before the ambush, the wrong call, the recovery. Would her father have made the same mistake? Or would he have seen it instantly, avoided it entirely? She opened another letter from the wooden box, her hands trembling. "Sarah, if you're reading this, I know you're questioning yourself. You'll wonder if mistakes disqualify you. They don't. Mistakes prove you're human. What matters is what you do next. Leaders aren't measured by perfection, but by how they carry imperfection with dignity. Never fear the stumble. Fear the refusal to rise." Her breath caught. The words cut too close, as if he had seen this very night. Tears blurred the ink. She pressed the letter to her lips, whispering, "I stumbled, Dad, I stumbled." But deep inside, a small ember of hope flickered, because she had also risen. The next day, the squad buzzed with talk of the exercise. Cadets who barely noticed her before now nodded with respect in the mess hall. Even Daniels, prideful and sharp, gave her credit. But Sarah didn't bask in it. Instead, she carried doubt like a shadow stitched to her boots. Respect from others meant nothing if she didn't respect herself. That evening, Martinez found her. The Master Chief leaned against the doorway of the training hall, her presence like a blade hidden in cloth. "Heard you pulled your squad out of a slaughter last night." Sarah stiffened. "I led them into it first." Martinez's mouth twitched into a ghost of a smile. "Welcome to leadership. No plan survives contact. You think your father never made mistakes? He did, plenty. The difference was, he didn't let the fear of them paralyze him." Sarah swallowed. "What if I'm not him?" "Then don't be," Martinez said flatly. "Be you. Stop measuring your worth by his shadow. He didn't want that for you." The words echoed, long after Martinez walked away. That night, Sarah opened the final letter from the box. "My Sarah, if you ever face a moment where you feel unworthy, remember this: worth isn't given, it's chosen. Every day, every breath, you choose who you are. You don't need to be me. You don't need to be anyone but yourself. And that will be enough." Her tears spilled freely this time. She held the letter, shaking, whispering to the silence, "I don't know how to be enough, but I'll try." Outside her window, the academy lights glowed against the dark, like stars refusing to be drowned by night. For the first time, Sarah felt that maybe invisibility wasn't erasure. Maybe it was resilience. Still, a question lingered, sharp as a blade. When the next test came, The real one, not paint and maps. Would she rise again? What if the choice you fear most is the one that defines you? Weeks passed, but the question Patterson left her with never loosened its grip. Special operations. The same path her father had walked, the same shadow that had swallowed him whole. Every time she laced her boots, every time the ring brushed against her knuckle, she felt the weight of that door standing open in front of her. Some days she leaned toward it. She remembered the field exercise, the way instinct had carried her through chaos, the respect in her squad's eyes afterward. Maybe she was built for it. Maybe the silence, the invisibility she'd always lived with, wasn't a weakness at all, but a weapon waiting to be used. Other days, doubt smothered her. She remembered the ambush, the wrong call, the near failure that could have cost her team everything. If that had been real combat, they wouldn't be slapping her back afterward. They'd be dead. Could she carry lives in her hands and not break? She read her father's letters again and again. Sometimes they comforted her. Sometimes they cut her deeper. You are not my shadow. Don't measure your life in medals. Worth isn't given, it's chosen. But which worth was she supposed to choose? His, hers, both? Jennifer noticed the change in her. She had always been Sarah's anchor, a steady voice of reason, but now her eyes followed Sarah more closely, her questions carrying sharper concern. You're distant, she said one night, their dorm room quiet except for the hum of the heater. It's like you're here but not really here. Sarah stared at the ring, twisting it slowly. Do you ever wonder if you're just pretending? Like you're standing in a uniform, saying the right words, but deep down you're not the person everyone thinks you are. Jennifer blinked, all the time. Sarah looked up, surprised. My dad's a captain, my brother's already on a destroyer. People think I belong here because of my name, but some nights I wonder if I earned it at all or if I'm just coasting on their shadows. She leaned closer. Sarah, everyone doubts, even the loud ones, especially the loud ones. The difference is you admit it. That's not weakness. That's strength. The words settled into Sarah like stones sinking into water. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. But the decision still loomed. A week later, Admiral Patterson returned. The announcement spread like fire across the academy. His presence meant something always. For Sarah, it meant reckoning. She was summoned to his office, a room so orderly it felt like every book, every map had been placed by deliberate hand. He stood behind the desk, posture straight, but his eyes carried a weight of familiarity now, not just authority. Midshipman Chen, he said, have you given thought to the opportunity I offered? Her throat tightened. Yes, sir. And Sarah hesitated. The truth wrestled inside her. Sir, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Patterson's gaze sharpened. None of us ever know we're ready. Not even your father. He doubted himself every mission. The question isn't whether you feel ready, it's whether you choose to step forward anyway. Sarah's voice cracked. And if I fail? Then you fail with honor, Patterson said, not unkindly. Failure in service isn't disgrace. It's part of the path. What dishonors us is refusing the call when it comes. The words hit hard. She wanted to believe them, but her chest still ached. Sir, my father's path killed him. If I follow it, won't I just repeat his fate? Patterson's expression softened. Maybe. Or maybe you'll carry his legacy further than he could. That's not my decision to make. It's yours. He slid a form across the desk. Voluntary application for Special Operations Track. The paper looked ordinary, but Sarah felt it burn. Take your time, Patterson said, but don't take too long, the world doesn't wait. She left the office with the paper folded in her hand, her palms sweating. The ring pressed into the page like a seal, as though her father's ghost were signing it already. That night Sarah couldn't sleep. She paced the dorm room until Jennifer sat up. Talk to me, Jennifer urged. Sarah sank onto her bunk, the form in her hands. Patterson wants me for special operations. Jennifer's eyes widened. That's huge. It's also suicide. Jennifer studied her. Do you want it? I don't know. Sarah's voice trembled. Part of me feels like if I don't, I'm betraying him. And part of me feels like if I do, I'll lose myself. Jennifer leaned closer, fierce now. Sarah, listen. You don't owe anyone your life, not even your father. He made his choice. You get to make yours. The words broke something open inside her. Later, when Jennifer slept again, Sarah sat by the window, the lights of Annapolis shimmering on the water. She unfolded the form. The boxes were empty. The line for her signature was blank. She thought of her father, the bedtime stories, the quiet laugh, the letters written in fading ink. And she thought of herself, not his shadow, not his replacement. Just Sarah. Her pen hovered, her hands shook. And then she set the form down, unsigned. Not yet. Because the choice wasn't just about honoring him. It was about honoring herself. And until she knew which path was truly hers, she couldn't sign. The next day, during leadership drills, Sarah surprised herself. She wasn't louder. She wasn't suddenly transformed. But when the squad faltered, she spoke, and they listened. Not because she was her father's daughter, not because Patterson had saluted her, but because her voice carried weight of its own. Afterward, Marcus clapped her on the back. See, you don't have to shout, people follow you anyway. Sarah smiled faintly. For the first time, she believed it. But still the form waited. The ring gleamed, the shadow lingered. And somewhere deep inside, Sarah knew, the true test hadn't come yet. The day would arrive when she couldn't hide, when she couldn't delay, when the choice would demand itself. And on that day, she would either rise into her father's legacy or forge a new one. What if the real test isn't about what you choose, but about why you choose it? The winter wind swept across the Naval Academy grounds, sharp and biting, carrying with it the weight of endings and beginnings. Sarah stood on the seawall overlooking the Chesapeake, the water restless beneath a pale gray sky. Graduation was months away, but decisions pressed closer, heavier than any exam or drill. The form for special operations still sat in her drawer, unsigned, waiting. Patterson hadn't asked again, but his eyes when they last met had carried the unspoken question, "Are you your father's daughter?" Sarah's fingers brushed the ring, cold against her skin. Every letter she had read whispered in her ears, their words both guiding and haunting. "You are not my shadow. Worth isn't given, it's chosen." But choice felt like a battlefield with no map. Behind her, boots crunched on stone. Master Chief Martinez joined her silently, hands in the pockets of a civilian coat, her presence as steady as the sea itself. They stood together in the cold for a long moment before Martinez finally spoke. "You're not sleeping." Sarah gave a faint laugh. "Is it that obvious?" Martinez smirked. "It always is, especially in those who carry too much on their shoulders." Sarah kept her eyes on the horizon. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do." "What do you want to do?" "That's the problem. I don't know if I want this because it's mine or because it was his." Martinez nodded as though she'd expected the answer. "When I was your age, I wanted to prove myself. To the Navy, to my family, to the ghosts in my head. Your father once told me the same thing I'll tell you now. Proving yourself is a battle you'll never win. Living true to yourself, that's the only victory that lasts." The words cut deep, but something inside Sarah began to shift. She turned to Martinez. "What would he want me to do?" Martinez's gaze softened. "He'd want you to live, however that looks. If that means special operations, fine. If it doesn't, fine. His sacrifice was so you could repeat it, it was so you could choose freely." Sarah closed her eyes. For the first time, the weight of her father's shadow felt less like a chain and more like a compass. Days passed, training continued, exams loomed. The academy pulsed with the same rhythm of discipline and expectation, but Sarah's heart beat differently now. She spoke with more certainty. She carried herself with a quiet steadiness. Others noticed. Daniels, once dismissive, began seeking her input during drills. Marcus leaned on her during late-night study sessions, trusting her calm when his nerves frayed. Even Jennifer, her oldest friend, looked at her differently, not with pity but with pride. But Sarah still hadn't signed the form. Then came the final leadership evaluation, a simulated crisis designed to test cadets under pressure, a hijacked vessel scenario, communications down, lives at risk. It wasn't combat, but it was as close as the academy could make it. Sarah was assigned command of her squad. The weight landed instantly. She remembered the ambush during the field exercise, the mistake that had nearly doomed them. This time, there would be no safety net of silence. Instructors observed. Every decision would be noted, judged. The scenario began. Her team scrambled into position, navigating the mock vessel's narrow corridors. Hostile actors played their parts with precision. Smoke filled compartments. Radios failed. Panic edged in. Sarah forced her voice steady, clear, calm, orders given, not shouted. They breached a corridor too fast. Paint rounds lit up. 2 cadets went down, sensors flashing red. Her chest seized. It was happening again. Another ambush, another mistake. But then her father's words echoed. Leaders aren't measured by perfection, but by how they carry imperfection with dignity. Sarah didn't freeze. She didn't collapse under the weight of failure. She adjusted, ordered a retreat, rerouted the squad, used the smoke as cover instead of curse. Within minutes, they regained momentum. Step by step, decision by decision, they pushed forward, not flawless, not clean, but steady. When the final buzzer sounded, the instructors called it success. The squad cheered. Jennifer hugged her. Marcus grinned. Daniels, grudging but sincere, said, "You're better at this than half the officers I've served under." Sarah smiled faintly, but her chest was heavy still. Success didn't erase the doubt. It never would. But maybe that was the point. Later in her dorm room, she unfolded the form again. The line for her signature glared up at her. She picked up the pen. And then she set it down. Because she finally understood. This wasn't about choosing her father's path or rejecting it. It wasn't about proving herself worthy of his shadow. It was about living true. She didn't need the form to honor him. She didn't need to vanish into classified missions or sacrifice her name to silence. She could serve with dignity anywhere, on a ship, in the air, in the classroom, in the quiet acts no one applauded. Her father's legacy wasn't a set of footsteps to follow. It was a compass pointing to truth. Service isn't about being seen. It's about what endures when no one is watching. The next day, Sarah requested a standard fleet assignment. No secrecy, no shadows, just the Navy and the chance to serve with steady, invisible strength. When Patterson heard, he summoned her again. His eyes searched hers, not with disappointment but with respect. "You've made your choice," he said. "Yes, sir." "And you believe it's the right one?" Sarah straightened. "I believe it's mine." For a long moment Patterson studied her. Then, to her surprise, a faint smile crossed his face. "Your father would be proud, not because you followed him, but because you didn't let his shadow decide for you." Relief washed over her, quiet but profound. That night Sarah opened the last letter in the box, the one she had saved, unread until now. "My Sarah, if you're reading this, then I didn't come home. But I need you to know this: dignity doesn't speak. It doesn't shout. It simply acts. If you live by that, whether in shadows or sunlight, you'll honor me more than any medal could, and you'll honor yourself." She folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the box, and closed it with steady hands. Outside, the Chesapeake glimmered under starlight, a quiet expanse made peaceful by sacrifices the world would never know. Sarah touched the ring, no longer seeing it as a chain but as a compass, not binding her to the past, guiding her into the future. And for the first time, she didn't feel invisible. She felt free. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.